Hello, I'm Jeremy Ford. In the first lesson, I was just using one colour, tropical phthalo blue, but now I'm going to introduce a second colour, cadmium yellow. And from these two colours, the blue and the yellow, we can mix a huge range of other colours. I'll show you what I mean. I'll take a small amount of the blue at full strength. This is how it is straight out of the tube. Very powerful colour, just a little blob. And then I'll take some of that and put it in another well and add a small amount of water to it, so it's a little bit weaker, and paint that underneath. Same thing again, a little bit weaker by adding more water. And again, paler still by adding more water. Lovely blues. And again, a bit paler still. Now on the other side of the paper, over to the left, I'll do the same thing with the yellow. Small amount of water and the paint at full strength. It's a lovely bright sunny yellow. Add water to it so it's a bit weaker. And again, a little bit weaker still. And again, paler. And paler still. Now I'm going to add each of these two colours, each colour to the other. I'll take a small amount of yellow at full strength, put it in another well, and add a tiny amount, tiny amount of blue, and put that next to it. And you can see a slight difference. Then underneath that, more water, and again, more water, more water, more water. On the other side, I'm going to take some of the blue, put that in another well. And this is where you need to wash your brush very carefully, because we don't want any of the blue to get into the yellow. So we'll just take a small amount of yellow and add it to the blue. Perhaps a little bit more blue. And then add some water to that. More water. More water. This takes a bit of practice. It's so easy to add too much of the other colour. You might find there'll be another colour in between these two, so you could try mixing that somewhere else, or there might be another colour in between these two. It's so easy to put too much of the other colour in, and colour mixing, it's very important just to add a small amount of colour. It can make a huge difference. And then last of all, more water. Next colour, more yellow. A little bit more blue. Perhaps a little bit more blue. Just a tiny amount. And we'll keep on working our way into the middle until they meet. I've done this exercise lots and lots of times, and mine is quite neat. Yours doesn't have to be. Don't worry about getting it neat. The most important thing is that you can see lots and lots of colours mixed from the yellow and the blue. We've seen some of the greens that we can mix from the yellow and the blue. Now I'm going to mix a few pale greens to paint around a simple daisy shape. First of all, a yellowish green, so plenty of water, a little bit of yellow and a tiny amount of blue. So we've got a nice yellowish green. Then the same thing on another part of the well. Some more yellow. A little more blue this time. And one more. Plenty of blue in this one. A little bit of yellow. Now I'll try these colours out on a piece of paper and see what they look like, because they can look quite different in the palette to how they look on paper. So that's the darker green, and then the mid green, and the paler green. That's fine. So those colours will be okay. I want to draw a simple daisy shape that I know where to paint around. Make some of the petals shorter, some longer. I'll draw a stem. And a few leaves can go off from there. So using nice watery paint, plenty of paint, carefully paint around the daisy shape, starting with the pale colour, and then spread the colour out from the flower. Just make some rough shapes, and then add some of the mid green as well. Add a little water, so we've got even paler colour. Using the brush strokes outwards from the flower. More of the pale colour. Nice and wet. For this kind of exercise, I think it's easier or safer to mix a lot of colour and use the paint nice and wet, really watery. I can paint over the stem, just painting around the flower. Letting the colours run, the mid green and the pale green. I think I'll save the darker green for a bit later on. Nice and wet. Use the tip of the brush to get some grassy shapes. Nice sharp point. And the middle of the daisy wants a little bit of yellow. And just there. Not too neat. And now I'll let that dry. So the flower petals don't look too flat, I want to strengthen some of them by making them a little bit bluer. As I did on an earlier exercise, a little bit of pale blue on some of the petals gives them a bit of variety. So very, very pale blue. But for detail, you don't want to have too much water on your brush, otherwise it blobs. Just little bits, just the odd petal here and there, quite pale. get rid of some of the paint and soften the edge, soften some of the blue. Same thing again on one or two of the other petals. Just make some a very delicate pale blue. And then those petals that are left white stand out against the darker ones. A little bit stronger blue now, just a touch more paint. Still not very wet. Just a little bit of deeper blue towards the middle. Starting to separate some of the petals. And if I mix a little bit of weak green, the yellow and the blue mixed together, and just put a few little dots on the lower part of the centre, just dotting it around. I'm going to keep the top part of it yellow. Now a little more blue on some of these petals. Not very wet, not too watery. And I'm concentrating most of the colour towards the middle of the flower. A little bit stronger. I think if you start pale, it's easier to put more paint on if you have to, than try and take paint off. So it's safer to underdo the colour than overdo it a bit. Now, where I've painted around some of the white petals, though those white petals stand out quite nicely now.